For the lousy start. Technical part failed us a little bit, so let's do the live again. My name is Andre. I'm a real estate concierge and a translator, certified translator, so this allows me to officially relocate people. Essentially, I'm in charge of my own company doing that. I'm relocating people from everywhere to Belarus. Mostly it's EU, US, Canada, and the business started in the first wave of COVID. So the technical part is being restored now. People are joining, so let's wait for the rest to recover the signal, and let's see how many of us are today. Today we're going to talk about the relocation story of my clients, the guys who were not very fortunate investing money, and out of 3 cases there are 3 little stories inside one big story. We're not going to discuss one of them that is going to resolve tomorrow. We're going to discuss frequently asked questions, and we're going to discuss some other things that are related to 2 big bad guys. One of them is an Indian national, one of them is a Pakistani national. And many of you have been asking questions throughout the last story, some follow-up questions. I'm seeing that people are back, so I hope that the sound is reaching you and that we are basically we're up and running. Please give me thumbs up and give me a hello message, guys, if we're all running, if we can see each other. Well, you can see me rather than each other. It's my second live, guys, so I'm not super good at pushing buttons here. So the live chat is on, so let's just assume you're all on and let's continue. A few words about who I am if you missed the first part. Real estate concierge is a person that is bridging the seller and the buyer. And in the Belarus, the real estate operations are legitimately run by a real estate agent and a realtor. Each of them is doing their own thing. It's on my channel. Further in the history, you may find some videos explaining how things work. In the real estate market, I'm mostly acting as a certified translator. This allows me to be at the deals, at the negotiations, to shortlist properties and stuff like that. Besides, I'm also running my own company, which officially, I highlight the fact officially, is relocating people from elsewhere to Belarus. But I guess I mentioned that already. So let's discuss the frequently asked questions, guys, so that you could be a little bit more active further on. Some people were asking questions, let's say, on different channels and other channels. Some of the questions were asked here. So the first one, can I ask a coffee shop with $20,000 start? I think it's a very handsome figure, and $20,000 makes a good budget if you are taking over a second-hand business. Good evening. Thank you very much for feedback. I'm pretty sure, and we will be releasing videos about this, about the businesses takeover, businesses, let's say, running businesses selling. We will be covering how much this may cost in this or other branch, and we will point your attention to the problematic areas, to the things that need to be checked. And generally, I think $20,000 is really a good idea. Can we study and do part-time job? Yes and no. Yes, because you can technically go to a university course if you have a work permit and you're here on a work permit. You can also take up a university course. But the other way around, if you've come here as a student on a student residency, you are unlikely to be able to take up a job officially. So again, just not to present this in a very confusing fashion. As I understand, and this is not a legal consultancy, by the way, the students that are coming over on a university invitation cannot officially work, and very often they will not really have time to do that effectively. Don't forget that you're coming into a country whose language you don't really command. So guys, the work and studies combination is not going to play for you very well. Can we do farming and goat farming in Belarus? Yeah, why the hell not? Don't forget that you cannot buy any land. Somebody was asking if he can establish a company and buy land, but something tells me that a foreign founder of a company behind this company already disallows the company to buy land as private property. Again, you need to consult with a lawyer about this. And also you have to check if your goat thing actually has market for it, because this is basically how you establish a business. You have to check if there's market to buy your stuff. As a side story for that, as an example, I will tell you about the horse farm that was majoring in horse milk. You know, this funny thing that is national culture in Kazakhstan. And it was a very solid setup. I mean, you have to have some cash to actually take over a disused farm, brush it up, and get some horses in there and set up all this milking thing. And they were milking female horses and basically bottling the milk, you know, which has very high fat content, as I understand. And this was a niche product. Then the crisis occurred, and I guess these guys are selling out and closing down. So to avoid this kind of thing, you have to think through, you have to actually see the country and make a ground research about what's happening here. So, can I start a business on 10,000 rupees? Doesn't sound super impressive. I didn't do my homework. I have to admit that I don't know the conversion rate, but it sounds like 3,000 to 5,000 US dollars, and it's not a super good idea. There is a place that just closed down in Victory Square. It's a fast food takeaway spot, so some of you may be considering that kind of thing and may look into that kind of an undertaking. Lovely question. Is there democracy in Belarus? Yes, our country is one of the world's most democratic countries, and basically during the COVID, people are mostly allowed to take a decision themselves whether or not they want masks, whether or not they need vaccinations, although it's a very biased way to answer this question, and for some reason I cannot really talk much politics in this field. I would say, yeah, we're fairly democratic and we can compete safety-wise and democracy-wise with some of the Western countries. So what's next? Indian fast food restaurant. I guess you either have to have the market for the Indian fast food, or you have to somehow place your outlet so that, let's say, hungry students would make your market. So it has to be based somewhere near the traffic line. Somebody here is commenting that a lot of businesses are closing. Yes, that's true. A lot of people are just relocating away from the mess, and this is our prologue, our connection with the major question. Ukrainian war is affecting businesses. Of course, it's bloody affecting businesses. The war happening next door, and our country being one of the major suppliers to that country being in war, basically supplying to both countries being at war, it's bound to affect the war. So no matter if one can make use of the let's say logistics opportunities that the war creates, although that sounds like a bit horrible, the general effect, including on my business, is rather negative, and I'm dying to see, figuratively, the war coming to some kind of negotiations, which is, some experts claim, is going to happen around November this year. So it may or may not be another month before they hit some kind of a resolution and some kind of a deal. Can we make movies in Belarus? Well, it depends on where you're moving and what kind of thing you're moving. Good evening, by the way. More people are joining up. And the answer is, I'm not a filmmaker, I'm just doing a little blog. So when it comes to filming somewhere in the city center, some historic buildings and stuff like that, you would probably have to clear it up additionally. Otherwise, if you can use equipment in discrete spots, I guess it's not even important to get some kind of an official clearance. Again, this borders on the legal matters generally I would say yes, you can make movies in Belarus if the script and if the story provides for that. If I buy a house in the village in Belarus and lock it for 5-6 months, will it be safe? It depends on what kind of village we're talking about, because one of my clients, the guy who was troubled by his misinvestment, actually got his house locked up, and somebody just tuned up the lock. I mean, just broke into the bloody house to make himself comfortable. We don't know who that was. That was definitely not an authorized break-in. So the thing didn't look very well. So I would recommend against a house in some kind of a remote village which only has traffic in summertime. Your belongings may not be safe. 50,000 euros to get Belarus citizenship. Probably I cut off the first part of the question, but no, you just can't get citizenship for 50,000 euro. For investing, and this is in the law by the way, for investing into Belarusian economy, which means you are joining one of the investment projects of Belarus, the budget must be 15,000 base units. One base unit is 32 rubles right now, so you can do mathematics yourself. Gets you permanent residency. Whether or not you really badly want permanent residency is up to you and your lawyer to research and look into what kind of benefits it gives you and how cool this is. By the way, permanent residency now comes as a plastic card. One of my clients recently got one of those. And now we are standing by to get his driving license translated and get his driving exam appointment, because in 90 days after you get permanent residency, you have to... Well, I can't compare real estate prices down compared to before the war. I would say the war created the shock, which got people a delay in deals. People were kind of waiting. But if you were following my channel, the video this May essentially got the real estate company CEO say that the shock is over and people are buying and selling. And a couple of months ago, the statistics was actually exceeding the purchases, the number of the deals versus July last year or August last year. Best sellers are 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. Right now my American client is selling a little flat in Minsk, 65 square meters, 3 rooms. So if you're interested, you can contact me. Under the video there are my contacts and donation links. By the way, if you have $5 or $10 to help the show, the help will be really appreciated. So depending on what market sector you're shopping in, some things like Stalin apartments in central Minsk, some things like newly built houses, apartments, and so on and so forth may have different kinds of price fluctuations. So it's a bit hard to judge about the whole market. I mean, with the whole market being very diverse, it's a bit hard to answer your question, because somebody who is looking for a deal and somebody who is, let's say, relocating and is pressed for a deal is bound to get you a lower price. So one of my responsibilities is to make that happen and facilitate, as a translator mostly, the deal between the seller and the buyer. The cost of house for TRP in Belarus. Now here we are approaching the major part of our discussion about ugly guys. The cost of house for TRP has to fit a certain concept. If you're buying a house for residency and getting a livable property for temporary residence, allows you to get temporary residency in Belarus, that is true. You also have to somehow marry this property into your further ways here in the country. If you are thinking to be running a business in Minsk, your house, whether or not it's 2 or 3 hours away, which is something not recommended, the house where you don't have to live, by the way, the house has to have solid walls, roof, heating, electricity. The lawn has to be trimmed so that the migration office accepts this as a fair deal. These houses 3 hours away from Minsk may cost a couple of $1,000 basically. So all these stories about $10,000 house being 3 hours away from Minsk, that's just very hard to believe in. I mean, if they have all these basic comforts, they're worth just a few $1,000s. And of course, you have to look at the properties nearby and see what the offers are, not blindly accept a deal for some 10,000 bucks for a place 3 hours away from Minsk. I would say it's an unreasonable deal. Whether or not the house is super comfortable or not, it just has to be good. Okay, I'm from Pakistan. I'm following Indian who is attracting people in their videos. They can buy property in Belarus and live their life well by doing different business. Again, if you settle yourself in a village and you want to run a business which basically requires your 24/7 involvement, guys, this is not a realistic thing, or it's a waste of money. I would recommend something closer to Minsk, which of course is gonna be a bit more expensive than a couple of $1,000s. So let's move on with the other further questions. The questions are welcome in the chat, guys. So whatever you have in mind, unless it's a professional consultancy, I'm happy to bring it up and discuss right now. Does law and order exist in Belarusian context of to Belarusian law and order via lawyers, courts, police, is someone scammed, frauded by? It depends on the scam. Right now we're trying to fight against the bad guys, and it's a very bad challenge because a lot of things were mishandled by the affected party. A lot of things were like payments, like other things, like receipts that never came, like written responsibilities that were messed up with lawyer missing while they were being made up. All these things invalidate a court claim. So now we're trying to use the tiny bits and scraps of evidence and to nail the bad guys. In Hungary, some people are building yurts. That's kind of cool. Can this be done in the east of Belarus? Well, some smaller houses can be created like the size of a sea container, and actually some people do that, but I guess this is a separate market. I would roughly say $15,000 to $25,000 is pretty much a possibility. And if you hook up to the grid, get yourself water supply, such a little home can be an opportunity to survive through the winter. But I would just go for a solid village house, and I would thank you for the fiver. Cheers to Canada. Mostly in the village you can expect regular electricity. If you open a business here, you can get residency without buying some house. Yes, actually, if we talk about temporary residency, we have a university course. There'll be 4 or 5 top ways of getting temporary residency according to the law. You can establish a company which will employ you, not just be a founder of some kind. You have to be a regular employee. Normally people get hired as directors. The other option is a university course, which puts you into uncomfortable students' shoes, let's say. And the other 2 things are a long-term hospital treatment that has to be backed with medical prescriptions and that kind of stuff. It can be a marriage, which you may agree is a bit of a costly as a solution. And this could be a residential property. Many clients buy village properties. Some of the village properties we got purchased now got invested more money than they cost, and people got themselves apartment-like comforts for the weekend stay or for the long winter holidays, whichever way they feel. That's just perfect. And others are buying apartments in Minsk, which confronts them with a money wire issue. You have to very much check it with your sending bank if transfer to Belarus is possible, because here it may be a problem. If I create an IT company, how much money do I have to make in order to keep the TRP? You know, your company will consume a certain amount of money in the first year, even without getting any profits. And then to pay yourself a salary of $1,000, I mean, if you get yourself an IT setup which pays you $400 US, that doesn't sound super realistic. Originally, first couple of months it may be quite minimal, but then if you pay yourself $1,000 a month, the winnings of the company have to be considerable, providing there are several more employees, and there is a serious, I mean, office-looking office, not some bullshit address for the sake of envelope. So it's what I would say takes us to the professional consultancy. And you're most welcome to contact offline. If you open a business here, you can get residency that we read, real business, create IT company. So law and order. Again, speaking of law and order, I was scammed myself. I was not really scammed. I was a little bit negligent about what I'm paying for and what I'm being delivered. In 2018, I had a pretty bad drop financially, and I managed to pull it off at court, which required certain help and assistance of certain people. I don't mean bribing bureaucrats or everything. It was very neat, straight job, and the law basically worked our way. This was how it happened. So, can we set up a sawmill for timber export of pine wood? Well, whatever timber you're dealing with, it has to be an operational facility. I don't know much about sawmills as an operating business, but I could tell you that this is a highly competitive thing, and this is something you have to know a lot about, including logistics, customs, and all these things before you set up a sawmill of your own. And good luck with that anyway. Can I visit Belarus on Schengen visa? Now, this question came from an Indian person, and different passport holders have different policies for their incoming travel here. So there is a law that an Indian person with a Schengen visa is free to come here, visa free, basically by landing at the airport after flying to EU. I mean, flying from EU down here, but there's a problem here. There are no operational flights from EU down here. So with your Schengen visa, you have to have EU entry stamp, and then you have to fly back here once the flights are open. So yes and no, you can come here visa free on the Schengen visa. Otherwise, you need a Belarusian visa. So it seems like we are having a little break for your questions, guys. Any more questions, perhaps? Anything at all before we proceed to our fraud story? The fraud story is developing on its own. Bad guys are being questioned and interviewed, and we're trying to see which way to go legally with all the bad things and bad guys. The world is full of bad guys, so one has to have a sharp eye. This week my clients are getting their residency extended by another few months, and we'll probably take one of the bad guys to court. Courts are pretty long, bad, and expensive, so anybody who has outstanding debts out here in Belarus, I would really recommend to resolve these things without courts, because as the guilty party is handsomely paying off their lawyer and they're throwing some BS on the desk of the judge, and then their claims are dismissed, and then they lose the case. Oh, could we resolve this thing peacefully, please? How can we discuss and negotiate things? Well, that's something you bloody have to do before the court case and before the whole thing gets official and very, very costly. So let's hope that one of the 3 little stories of my clients will get resolved peacefully and efficiently tomorrow. And for now, we can talk about ugly guys. Before we talk about ugly guys, I would like to say that I sharply, strongly, most dramatically disapprove of the silence of the guys who were hit by bad guys, either intimidated or feeling uncomfortable or promised that their money would be paid off after the big guys resolved their financial matters. I very much disapprove of these guys. I know a couple of guys who went silent, who are waiting to go online and to tell their story in a couple of weeks. Every day these people are silent, somebody gets screwed, loses their money, their hope, and the crime against them is pretty much to be shared by the guys who were silent. So you're asking why am I not airing the guys who had their tragedy? Part 3. is definitely gonna get you some names and some faces, and we will discuss the whole thing in detail. Speaking about just a lyrical, almost a joke, a lyrical injection here while you're summoning questions, if anybody has questions. There was this story I saw on one of the blogs here with a limo. The cameraman is in the limo, and there is a nice rich guy sitting in the back. This looks like some VIP treatment. And then they catch the sight of a police car with blue lights, like escorting them. I don't know what the video said. It was obviously not in English, but thing is that as a local, I know about cars a little bit, and as a tour guide, I was in the convoy with real serious, big guys. Big guys who were escorted by the traffic cops. The car on the blog is not from the traffic cops. And the car in the blog has two blue lights, which allows it to take priority in the traffic. And the car that belongs to brand Geely, that's Chinese brand that is now the new supplier of our cops, belongs to the security department. So if I may voice my opinion about that blog thing, about that short story, the cops got an alarm system off in some apartment, put on their lights, and just rushed to collect some bad guy. This was cheerfully captured by the cameraman, and I don't think, and I'm ready to apologize officially, if there is a continuation of that story, if the convoy led all these guys through the crowds of Minsk to some nice Indian restaurant, and then a transaction was discussed, and some 20 solid minutes of videotape with the police convoy would make me certain that was police convoy. Otherwise it's just bullshit and the lucky cameraman's job. By the way, good job. And many of you guys were asking if the Big Boys channel is the one I'm talking about here, if Priyanshu is the bad guy who is doing ugly things with homes and everything. And let's say, of course, no. Of course, I don't speak about him. And while the investigation is ongoing, I cannot tell you the name of the guy that we are battling with. Again, there are two guys. One is Indian, one is Pakistani. I'm pretty sure that Mr. Priyanshu, who is a very big dealer and big operator, he seems to be bridging nations together. He seems to be selling factories. He seems to be reselling businesses, some kind of lounges. I heard a car story, a limousine story of some kind, but I don't know the details too well. So, and the bad guy now story actually had my clients wire him crypto to India, basically not in his name, but in the name of the third party. So this is a wrinkle in investigation, and it will take us extra effort to connect these things with our case and take it to the police. So I would say Mr. Priyanshu is reasonable enough not to do this, and Mr. Priyanshu is definitely not telling his clients to remove the history of the messages, because they can be tracked and scanned, and obviously he doesn't make a scene out of a mobile phone lying on the table because government taps him, because if he's a legal operator, which he pretty much looks like, would he really go to such extreme measures to shut down any, sources of signals if his operations are legal? I don't think so. He is a co-founder of a travel agency, as far as I heard, and he is a legitimate resident of Belarus with permanent residency, as far as I understand, but you'd better clarify with him. And of course, he is not the guy who would fix some small guys on power of attorney to buy houses in someone else's name, in the name of my clients. There were 4 houses bought, and 2 of them are basically bullshit houses, although he paid $10,000 for each house. 2 houses are not fit for living and are not fit for selling. And when the locals heard how much they cost, they were basically laughing, although this is a bit of ironic laughter in our story, but Mr. Priyanshu would not be dealing with such bullshit, right? He barely has time to leave his office for a lunch or a break of some kind. He's not really operating with homes that don't cost $3,000 or $5,000 to get somebody residency. I mean, I don't think that's his official capacity. No, we're not talking about the bad guy, the big guy. I mean, not about Mr. Priyanshu, Big Boy's Life. I mean, this is the channel that we have nothing against yet. I hereby again declare that we have no issues with Mr. Priyanshu. He doesn't charge people in crypto. He mostly, I hope, runs his business legitimately and officially here in Belarus. And again, we have nothing against him unless the court declares otherwise. I hope you can read between the lines, guys. Now we can discuss any questions that you may have, anything about relocating to Belarus, businesses in Belarus, life in Belarus. Life seems okay, except inflation is a bit picking up. So the prices are by and by going up, and your yesterday's item, your last week's item may be a shade more expensive than the week before. Maybe in the coming days, maybe tomorrow even, I'll present another video about prices for food and everything in Belarus. And maybe the inflation can be compared to similar figures in Europe. Maybe it's worse. You know, official statistical agencies here are not very loud about the economic effect of the war. They just cheerfully declare things that progress, but they don't really make an accent on inflation and prices that are going up when they report the progress. And this is something we are going to cover in the next couple of weeks. It's now Sunday afternoon, guys. People are going to their recreation spot. People are enjoying life by and by. Nathaniel is saying that if I'm still not convinced that he has scammed, bluffed you as well. Yeah, well, Nathan, it's always nice to judge from the side. The big boys, Priyanshu Jha is the main guy behind everything. I'm reading guys' comments. He plays by putting other people in the front as dummies. Well, like I said, Priyanshu is a serious guy, and he would never have such things arranged, such strange things arranged by strange people, such as crypto wire. Why would somebody wire crypto for houses that Priyanshu allegedly gets purchased in their names? Why should that happen abroad? Why don't you just bring the cash in here or wire money here and then pay off directly to the seller? Of course, it's nice and sweet when the deal gets arranged for you by some guys. And question is, are you sure that the houses that are going to be purchased, and a lot of some people here on the ground are pretty unhappy with how the house purchases were arranged. Some of them get their residences cancelled. But again, Priyanshu is too serious to be dealing in that, I hope. And also, by the way, Priyanshu would never arrange people's invitations through some private persons, through some private assistants of his, because if he's a big dealer and big operator, there has to be a business that actually invites people to handle these matters. So I guess he's not really doing that, if you know what I mean. So Belarusian products are awful for export. I wouldn't say that so plainly, unless you're an expert. Let's say some of our stuff may have higher and lower quality, but some of the agricultural products are cheerfully finding their buyers in Russia, and the Russians are pretty high about dairy products, so I wouldn't say. Thoughts on the downstream effects of Nord Stream? Well, seems like Americans and Chinese are winning from that. I don't think Russians were so pissed off by the contract obligations pressed to them at court. This sounds like BS. I think that somebody just helped the Europeans to resolve this moral dilemma of paying Russians more for their gas daily than their supporting than their support of the military effort of Ukraine. Your hope is completely wrong. I'm sorry to inform you. Yeah, thank you. Our friend Nathaniel is saying that's all arranged by him so that money is received in India and the buyer can't prove anything in Belarus. You're a bloody genius, right? Uh, so we can import to India from Belarus in order to make Belarusian economy strong. Well, it has to be researched. There has to be a strong buyer for whatever stuff you're going to deliver from here, and obviously foodstuffs are going to be a challenge because of the shelf life and transportation requirements. So what were we talking about? I would like to again stress the fact that the applications for residencies, all the paperwork, all the bureaucratic things are not really handled by some facilitators of some kind of big dealers of, or some kind of support services. You may go to a law company, of course make sure that it's a well-established operator to provide immigration services and stuff like that to handle your residency application, but basically all you need to have is a translator. You may take it down as a commercial, because what you need is a form filled, papers stacked the way they should be in case you've picked university course, company ownership or property ownership, and you just go to apply. That's it. No magic involved. Well guys, let's see what else is on the chat, and we will be pronouncing goodbyes until the next season. To finish the good price. Oh yes, electricity. I have the house, my own village house, which is not the best in heating insulation thing. I have my own house heated with electric heaters, 2 of them in each room, living room, that's the only 2 I have. And every month I have some 300 kilowatts consumption. Mostly I don't stick around the house, and that costs me around 50 US, not even 50 US dollars, about 30 US dollars in bills. As for natural gas, I really cannot tell you how much it costs, but I think that prices are quite insignificant, especially if we compare those to European ones. Of course, on a local salary or on a local pension, average pension here would be about 250 US a month. In equivalent, the local gas prices aren't super good. But, and this makes one of the biggest gambles for people relocating to Belarus, the question of the season, the question of this winter is on which side of the pipeline you wish to remain, where your moral and business compass navigates you to be, on this side or somewhere else. Were there any other questions about electricity and stuff? Let me check. How safe is for Russians to stay here in order? I've met a few guys that are staying, and it's no big deal. Russians are pretty much on friendly terms with Belarusians, and Russian runaways from the war are, let's say, not unwelcome here if you're asking about the general public, general crowd, so that's no problem. And yes, they must register. Can you please give the full piece of advice, or not give a piece of advice about registration if you know how it's meant to work, please? They don't have to go through passport control. Well, between Russia and Belarus, Russian citizens don't have to go through the international checkpoints. That's the idea of the union state. But they do have to register within their own deadlines. That's correct. But they're not, most of them, they're not staying here on such a long-term stay that would necessitate that. I guess it depends on the plan, and the plan is to get across the border, so all the flights are out mostly. As for helping the channel, guys, you can press the thanks button under the video. It allows to donate pretty much from every spot on the globe, or use the links, donation alerts, or the other one to make it a long-term support or a one-time support. It's up to you. Caught cold a little bit here, but no COVID yet. Although by the way, the bank people are putting on masks. It seems like, based on the previous experience, that's the worst thing that is going to be in place. in Belarus. We don't really do vaccines on the mandatory basis, no social distancing and other Western stuff that makes a lot of Westerners so keen to move to the east. Any more questions, guys? Anything at all we could cover today? Priyanshu Jha is a dodgy guy. Well, it's a private point of view. Your hope is completely wrong. Well, buddy, I'm a well-informed pessimist. I don't mind. Yeah, the pipeline thing is a real big mess. Diesel costs 2.48 kopecks, 2 rubles 48 kopecks a liter. So that's, well, I guess it's just about $1 per liter. And diesel is equal in price with a 95th benzene. The Americans use a different term like gas or something, but technically it's 95th benzene. It's of the same price. And it's pretty much like in Russia, so no big deal here. Mir cards seem to be working here all right, and European cards, Visa and MasterCard, are working here like 70%. Some of the businesses use sanctioned banks like Russian banks to conduct transactions, so the card may be declined in this shop, and in the next door shop it just works perfectly. Several clients of mine had such a thing, and one of the clients was pretty certain, and the bank confirmed that his $100,000 wire to Belarus would work out when he was trying to initiate a transaction to send this money over here to make a purchase of a charming one-bedroom apartment we found for him. The video about apartments is available for members, by the way. So the money never went through, so we're looking for a solution here. Guys, when you're coming to Belarus in these days, cash is a big troubleshooter. Cash is going to solve a lot of problems for you, and when you are buying a real estate property around $10,000, this is something you can bring in your own pocket. The amount of money over $10,000 is something you have to declare at the border, but that's just checking a few boxes in the declaration. That's it. Under 100,000, there's no massive paperwork involved. Transit airports make a different thing, different problem, and this is something you may have to research yourself. Couple more minutes, guys, and I'll be bidding goodbyes. We have an expat meeting tonight at Malt and Hops in the city center, so if you happen to be in Minsk, we'll be happy to see you all in person, and we probably will go to every week meetings with the expats. Guys are relocated over here, guys who are in town, we're socializing together, discussing everyday matters, solutions, issues that come our way, and of course the latest COVID gossip in town. COVID actually brought us here together. That's how I got my new line of business. Speaking of heating bills, one of my clients is going to rent out a flat, and the thing here with a long-term flat rental, this is probably the last issue we're going to cover today, guys, is that if you have some Belarusian registered to an apartment where tenant is supposed to live, the bills are subsidized because the government is subsidizing bills for apartments that are not empty. So the Belarusian is not actually living there, which I understand is kind of illegal, but he is registered as living there, and the bills are not as damaging. A foreign owner gets 5-time bill for gas and 5-time bill for electricity, so this is more expensive. And this winter, after we start getting the heating bills, the heating is already on in the city center at least, Actually, I just came from Vitebsk. The heating is on there in the apartments, and in the city of Minsk it's also functional already. Although the weather's gonna go up a little bit, the temperature, yeah, it seems like indoor heating is already there. So this November and December bills are going to go up. We'll see how considerable that is versus to preheating time. So that's just gonna be in a month. So that's another subject we're going to cover in the coming days. Well then, any last minute questions? Anything at all? We discussed the cards. $100,000 for what? Well, don't know about that, but one of my clients is saying that by the end of the year, exchange rate may be 2 rubles a dollar. This may or may not be true. Somebody's asking about declared cash. 9,999 in equivalent. Could be dollars, could be something else. I recommend dollars. Can be brought in your pocket, including babies, children, grown-up children, every person, as our Western friends say. Yes, so 4 persons, predictably, bring in 40,000 undeclared US dollars. But you may just be reasonable, stack it up the way you wish, and declare that you're bringing in $50,000, $60,000, whatever. You have to bring this. 2 sides of a declaration form, and it even has English written translation to the boxes, so you will never miss what you have to fill in. Well, not really witnessed. Somebody contacted me from the customs at the airport. He bumped into the green channel with $100,000. So essentially, with $10,000 limit for undeclared amounts, the extra 90,000 was taken off him officially. This is an official punishment, and officially there's also a fine after a court procedure or something like this. I was never caught doing that, so I cannot tell you the details of how it works out. But the guy was really, really unhappy. All he had to do was to be really attentive. Folks, with all the questions exhausted, I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for your support. $5 from Canada, definitely helpful. And follow my videos and follow my channel long term. I hope we'll meet each other either online in a week or tonight in person. It was a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully the next video will be a bit more full of details that you may like. Cheers.